Hello, everyone. I'm here today to talk about my character, Susan B. Anthony. Susan B. Anthony was an activist for women's rights. She left a lot for us, for women, as especially the 19th Amendment. She ran for the National Women's Suffrage Association, NWSA, and along with Elizabeth Cady Stanton. And she's also a Quaker, which I think her beliefs push forward on this movement, given that everyone should be treated equally. So her timeline is during 1860s, she worked towards abolition of slavery along with women's rights, more towards the abolition of slavery as it was more accepted during that time. Then, when it was ratified in 1868, she moved on to women's rights along with Stanton. In 1869, the group that she was originally part of, Area, split into two different groups, both for women's suffrage, but not having the same way of going about it and the way same end goal. In 1869 to 1872, the 15th Amendment was ratified, and the groups failed to come back together even when it was mostly needed. So, the small support that they gained in 1872 was the Republicans giving Anthony the offer to register to vote, so she had the opportunity to vote on the 1872 election. For the 1872 election, Anthony registered to vote and voted along with some of her friends on election day. She was then called for illegal voting, and then she went to her trials, and as far as got to federal court. Her goal was to go to Supreme Court, but she was then going on a criminal trial. Her judge at the time was Justice Ward Hunt, who unfortunately gave her the guilty verdict, which is not how the court should have gone. Some political context and connections during that time is there was a civil war, abolition of slavery, and the Ku Klux Klan, as well as capitalism and the two power systems. So Anthony involved herself in all these topics as she fought. She battled hard for the abolition of slavery around the time of Civil War. And when she talked to Frederick Douglass about getting people of color to go in on her women's rights movement, they decided not because they felt that they didn't go through the same pain as people of color because they didn't have to deal with the pain as Ku Klux Klan. Then we have the Democrats and Republicans, as the Democrats were more into capitalism during that time, so they didn't care whatever Anthony had to do because it didn't have money in it. And the Republicans said, "I'll throw you a bone. Here, have this if you do this a lot for us," which is the Republican split. Some characteristics of Anthony is she really stood for her beliefs and went for her goals, very goal passionate. She worked with her friends and her connections to work through all of her struggles. And she worked really well with her lawyers, Van Vuhars and Celine, and her friends, Elizabeth, and her group, NWSA. And some weakness I'd like to mention is being a woman, because being a woman that term during that time is really difficult, especially for trying to say, hey, I want this to happen even though I'm a woman, like, because I'm a woman, I'd like this to happen for me, but it's just because she wanted it to be. And then not being pitiful enough, I felt like if she felt was more pitiful and not as strong for her as she was, she might have actually pulled through with Justice Wartime because he seemed to fall for a more pitiful woman. So her political style is retail and reformist, meaning that she would go to every person and try to make a connection as a retail person would. And then she also tried to talk about the fact that it should be right. Like, not just because she wants it, but because men and women should be equal and not just because women want it. She wants to be like, yeah, I want to be the same as men. No, because it should be a right. So in common she had is even with the Democrats and Republicans, as they were the ones who Democrats were the one who like told people about Anthony that she voted illegally. The Republicans just gave her a bone, so they weren't really there to stand up for her in any way, shape, or form. Even though they gave her a small bone, they weren't really there to help. Victoria Woodhull was somebody that was part of her friends, and then she decided to turn on them moving forward. She then continued on and tried to run for a third party in the 1872 election, which I don't believe ended well for her. And Justice Ward Hunt and Crowley were part of the trial during her time. And then the other opposing group, were no help as well, as they just wanted to fight with them and not solve anything for them. So challenges and opportunities are together because I believe anytime she had a challenge, she turned that into an opportunity for herself. She often would take any of these situations and turn it towards herself. She strove for her goals, even putting her health above it. The goal was to go to Supreme Court, so she got a Republican splint from the Republicans, which was a lot of work, but even so, she still did it. To register and place her vote, she still had a lot of troubles even getting that far. She worked hard to change public opinion on the women's rights to vote, but it didn't work as well. Anthony always considered multiple angles and how to solve stuff. She even tried every output she possibly could, and especially during those breaks in the hearings. So the legacy that Anthony left behind for us is she left behind the 19th Amendment, which we mostly know about, equal rights for citizenship, and married woman property rights. These were all started by Anthony, none she could ever actually solve. So after reading about Anthony, I was quite surprised about many things. I honestly didn't know who she was before I read this, but I'm glad I did because I learned so much from her, and the fact that we got this right to vote from what she did made me feel really happy and glad that I was able to read this. At one point, Anthony talked about how women could be viewed as slaves, as they didn't have the same rights as men, but only lived in a country and couldn't vote on how their country operated. Anthony's story told me a lot of things, and I learned so much for it. For instance, I learned how the movement needs to start with somebody who is motivated to move forward in any way they can to make it happen. Even if they are unable to achieve the goal, their work could be continued on forward. Because of her giant snowball she left, people kept going. Nothing really important happened as much as she did, being the first woman to vote, but it kept rolling until we got the 19th Amendment, which I think is really important. So my first connection is liberties and civil rights. So liberties is being in a free state away from society and oppression, and being civil rights are the right of the citizen and political inequality. So Anthony's life exemplifies the same features and goals seen in the article, The Black Feminist Statement. The article is about the oppression of Black women, how they strove to change the way that people viewed them. At one point, they mentioned how they were treated differently from all men and even white women. Even so, they strove to change something about their goals, their rights, and oppression, as we see in Anthony's life, which was mostly spent in movements. Most of the time during the movements for women's rights to gain the right to vote, Anthony also supported the abolition of slavery. Most of these movements involve the right to be yourself without being oppressed because of gender or race. During her time, she wasn't the one who finished the movements, but she was the one who started it. The article makes a statement about how they wish to change policies to prevent people like themselves from being oppressed because of their feature. Anthony also believes in this because she felt oppressed by not being able to express herself to the government. Though she was a U.S. citizen, she was less valued than a male citizen and fought for the same rights men had. Only for a woman. Only for a woman. In the article, they mention another movement, the American Women's Movement, which is also something that Anthony started for to be equal, same as man, same as a man. No, that's not what I want. So my second connection is voting, which is voicing your opinion on a topic. Susan B. Anthony was the first woman to vote, which was her plan as well to make it question people in their mind, should women be able to get the right to vote? A reference Anthony makes is with voting is slavery, meaning that if you're unable to vote, then you're basically a slave, as you have no conjunction on whether your country says you're a villain, you worked, all you do is work, so you have no value in the world. In the book, in Tion's book, Into Political Silence, he says in the chapter 5, he has a chapter on elections and voting. I'm just going to talk about the voting section. And in that section, Sell tells us that there's an event in which changes were made to the voting process, lowering the voting minimum age because of war and at the age of when we're being drafted. So then if they're being drafted, they should be able to vote. Both of these situations brought about change for a country, ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to vote. While everyone might have an opportunity to vote, many don't utilize it. There are many reasons for this, such as researching, timing, and motivation. The reason I mention this is because while many people don't vote, the number of women who vote is always higher. And while many people don't, especially black men and white women, it's always higher. If you're a woman, it's always often higher, which is important because I want people to see that Anthony's work wasn't just something that has changed. It means that women are often able to express their opinion, and they're the ones who express their opinion more often even than men. So the last thing I want to leave with is this quote from Anthony. men in their rights and nothing more, women in their rights and nothing less. So this quote means to me that men, their rights are nothing. There's nothing more they need to gain. There's nothing else they need to try for or see for. And women, their rights, there's nothing less. Their rights are worth nothing as men are in comparison. I think these words from Anthony mean a lot. And you can still see some of this in our world today as men's pay versus women's pay, even for the same job, which is unfortunate. I hope the world will be someday similar where we have the same values. So thank you. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. And thank you for listening.